Hey, welcome back. This is our three-part series that we're doing on the how and the when to have conversations around smartphones with your kid. And this is part two, pulling the mask off of smartphones. And the name comes from those old Scooby-Doo cartoons where they would finally catch the bad guy and they would say, all right, let's see who they really are. They would pull the mask off, right? What we're going to do in this section is a lot of data and research and pull the mask off of smartphones and kind of show you the good, but also all the bad that can come with it. Now, before I go on, I do want to point you to our links and our resource page. Every book that we consulted, every website that we learned from, research, everything that included, there's a QR code that you can scan that's going to come on the screen. This is a digital parent folder that anyone with this link can go and view and download. So you can feel free to share this if you need to, but I'm going to go pretty quickly over these things, knowing that there is access to all of these stats, to all of these websites, to all of these books even we used here in that folder. But in this part, we're going to talk about the bad sides and the good sides. But first, I want to talk about a book called The Giver. The book, if you've read it, you know that it's more of like a childhood, adolescent geared book. I read it when I was in 7th grade. It's about a utopian society and where everything is perfect, everything is fair, everything is equal. When every single kid in that village turns 6, they get a bike. When everyone turns 10, they get whatever, an Xbox. When everyone turns 13, they are assigned an apprenticeship that they do for life. And so there's a group of elders that run this town who watch the communities and the kids as they grow up, and they know what they're good at, and they know what their personalities are, and they assign them roles. Everything from like a nurse in a hospital to a teacher. And when you get to that age, there's a big ceremony, and they assign you your role. Now, in this town, everyone's memories are just of their own life. There is no memory at all if I'm 33 years old, for me, pre-33 years old. There's no memories of war, of famine, of death. There's also no memories of ice cream trucks. Dang it. No, I'm just going to say there's no more memories. Okay, cool. All right. There's also no memories of summer vacations and ice cream trucks and playing outside with your friends or whatever, birthday parties. There's no birthday parties. It's awful. It's terrible. Because all the memories, everything that the world has ever experienced lives with one person called the giver. And once in a lifetime, a 13-year-old is selected in the town to be the receiver, which means they will meet now for the next decades with this giver and slowly receive all these memories so that one person can act as like a prophet to the elders from the community, and that one person can hold the memories, give wise counsel, and kind of direct the major decisions. Well, when the new receiver goes to the giver first gives the receiver some great memories. This is the birthday parties and sunshine, and downhill snow skiing is one of them. And the receiver is hooked. He wants more and more and more, and the giver warns him, hey, slow down, like we have a lot of time to give you all this. But the receiver is set, he's set in his ways. He knows that he wants all the memories, so the giver gives him war, murder, famine. He gives him things that make us feel lost in the world, the evil side of living on this world. And the receiver says, okay, I'm done. I don't want any more, nothing else. And the giver says, actually, you can't have a good without the bad. You have to take both. And that's how I think about smartphones. So when our kids are at home and they're telling us all my friends have phones and it's so great, and there's gaming and there's social media and there's all these awesome TikToks to watch and all this stuff going on, they are just hearing about the positives, the pleasurable side of having a phone. They don't know about the negative sides because, if I'm honest, no one talks about the depression and the anxiety that they cause or the feelings of jealousy and discontentment that being connected can lead to. And so our job as parents is to really act as the giver and our children as the receiver, but is to educate them on what the good and the bad things are. And I think the good things that phones can do, I think they're amazing. And one of the best thing that phones do is connection. There's an interconnectedness that brings students together. And so when I think of interconnectedness nowadays, I think of, hey, your student will have instant access to their small group leader. That means that they're going to have access to a godly, mature person that they can always reach out to when they don't feel like they can maybe talk to their parents. And as a parent, I want more godly voices in my kids' life because they're going to have a lot of ungodly ones in their schools, on their teams, and neighborhoods. So they will have instant access to small group leaders. I know a lot of our small groups, a lot of them have like group me's and group iMessage chats. And a lot of our small group leaders send monthly emails to their parents just checking in. That's the people that you're giving your kid access to. In that resource folder, there is like a contract. And maybe something that you add to that contract would be, hey, weekly, you have to check in with your small group leader. Send them a text. Tell them how you're doing, because I know that you won't tell me some stuff. So weekly check in with them. Also, there's connecting through gaming. Now, earlier in the previous video, I had said that the world has changed, and that's an understatement. So has gaming. I remember that if you wanted to play any multiplayer gaming, for me it was Halo on the original Xbox. You had to have friends bring their Xboxes and USB cables and link them together and pray that someone had a TV big enough to see all these little screens. That was multiplayer. Nowadays, multiplayer is you have a headset on, you're on Xbox Live, and you're doing the same exact thing. You're just talking about the game, and you're talking with friends and people, but you're doing it digitally and virtually. There's games like Among Us, where you can have like custom-made codes and invite students to a game where you know everyone in the game. There are safe places to really connect. One of the biggest things I hear parents say is they're just sitting at home behind a screen just gaming. They're not hanging out with friends. My pushback is, well, they actually are hanging out with friends. As I remember my own teenage years, we didn't talk about anything other than the game. That's it. And that's what they're doing, just in a digital world. And so I do think that's a benefit to having a phone as well. I do want to say, though, conversely, more time spent in person with friends, like in-person interactions, did correlate with fewer mental health issues. And we're going to actually focus on that word correlate in just a little bit. But now we're going to actually get into some of the negatives of social media and the negatives of the world that we're going to be giving our kids access to. Because there's always an underbelly, there's always a dark side. And there's a list of 5 things that we're going to be talking about very briefly, from bullying, mental health, pornography, blue light effects, and also other exposure that they might get that we don't really ever think about, such as sexting and airdropping from settings such as the school bus on the way home after school. But real quick, I'm going to read all this because I want to get these stats right. This is all research that has been done in previous years about bullying, about mental health, and everything like that. And all these stats can be found, again, in that QR code. All those stats can be found in all those papers and research websites as well. But did you know that over half of adolescents and teens have been bullied online, and the same number have engaged in it? So it's a behavior that hurts them, but they're learning it, and then it seems like a lot of them are doing it back to other people. It's a cycle. Now, bullying may be defined differently by who you ask, but there's a general consensus among experts that would suggest that bullying is repeated behavior, not just a one time where someone's just being a jerk to you. That's just them being a jerk. maybe they had a bad day, maybe they didn't get Lucky Charms for breakfast and they wanted Lucky Charms. Being a bully is when you are being a jerk repeatedly to somebody. So these are all based off of that definition. Over 25% of adolescents and teens have been bullied repeatedly through cell phones and the internet. So half have experienced bullying in general, just anywhere, and half of that, 25% of the 50, have experienced it on their cell phones and smart devices. That means at Hope alone, if we have 200 students on a given weekend, that's 50 students who are experiencing bullying at any one weekend that we have. That's insane. That's not okay. But what's even worse is that only 1 in 10 tell their parents about it. There are 50 students who will have bullying happen in their lives on a daily basis. And out of those 50, 5 of them will say something about it. That is not okay. 1 in 5 teens have posted or sent sexually suggestive or nude photos of themselves to others. We call this sexting. And the biggest way that adolescents are bullied is actually girls when they experience the spreading of rumors. That's just the number one stat on it. Girls are bullied more, and it is usually in the form of spreading rumors, sharing false stories, telling lies about someone to try to make them look bad. That's bullying. This has been in the news a lot over the past few years. This has really been raised to the top. We see it all the time. Hopefully you're not oblivious to it, but there are some great resources and links in that resource page. But next up is mental health. Now this one was difficult because the research that I had to use was actually based out of 2017, released in late 2018, because everything 2020 and beyond is linked to COVID, the shutdown, pandemic. I couldn't find any real hard data on specifically like cell phone use and mental health post-2020 because the shutdown and quarantine and COVID really did affect, it spiked the rates of anxiety and depression and suicide across our country. But this is specifically about cell phone use, and so there is current data, but it's just from prior to our shutdown in 2020. That being said, between 2009 and 2017, rates of depression among kids aged 14 to 17 increased by more than 60%. From 2009 to 2017, before the shutdown, they rose 60%. The study found the increases were nearly as steep among those ages 12 to 13 at almost 50%, at 47%. Before COVID, before the shutdown, which has raised things anyways, there is a mental health rate that is skyrocketing. Skyrocketing. Now, I do have to say this. The research does not answer one really important question, and that the whole chicken or the egg, which came first. So one thing that the research did not ask is, well, are kids depressed and are they going to their phones as an escape? Or are they on their phones and something that they're seeing and experiencing is making them more depressed and anxious? Therefore, we can't really come to a conclusion on if it's direct causing or if it's correlated. So for the sake of these videos and this research, there is a strong correlation between smartphone use and mental health. We cannot say that there is a direct cause because, I don't think the right questions were necessarily asked or explored. But there is a lot of strong correlation between the two. Now, in a study by the APA, 1/3 to 1/2 between there responded that social media made them feel judged or bad about themselves. And in her book, Jean Twenge, her book iGen, which is not written from a Christian perspective, is just a research book. She analyzed a large set of sets of data in a survey, and she saw a rise starting in 2012 of mental health. So this 2009, 2017, it checks out, and her study reinforces that. But what's happening in 2012 is a rapid rise in mobile apps, specifically social media use. And so with this rise and having this connection to comparing yourself to others, to jealousy, to cyberbullying, to whatever it is, there's also a direct correlation and rises among mental health issues in teens, specifically grades 8 through 12. The next thing we're going to talk about real quick is blue light. This is something that here at Hope we have talked to our students about. I can't recall if we talked to parents about it yet, but we are now. There's something that you do every single night in your sleep called REM sleep. REM sleep plays a significant role in helping your brain consolidate and process new information, i.e. what a student may have learned at school that day. The information is then retained in long-term memory. And so REM actually helps us grow in our knowledge. It helps us have better mental concentration and helps us have mood regulation, which if you have middle schoolers, you just picked up a little bit. Oh, mood swings, huh? Yes. And we're going to talk about how blue light does affect that. Now, the negative effects from a lack of REM sleep can be serious. Without this critical sleep stage, without the deep sleep stage in the middle of the night, your immune system can be weakened. You may experience more pain more deeply, and the growth of new healthy cells and tissue is blocked. And poor REM sleep oftentimes can be directly linked to the blue light that comes off of our devices, TVs, computers, laptops, tablets, cell phones that we have. Studies suggest that blue light exposure right before bedtime have led to decreased production of melatonin, which is the drug that your brain makes, and melatonin helps send you into that sleep. So the more that we are on our phones and screens as we're going to bed, the more that this light and what we're taking in is blocking our brains from producing this drug to send us into this deep sleep that's helping our moods and our critical thinking and decision making because we're not retaining what we're learning that day. Essentially, being on our phones at night is making us dumber as a country. Next, we're going to talk about pornography. We're going to shift and talk about this because, like we said earlier, you are giving your kid access to everything. And something I always tell parents is that whatever you were doing at 16 years old, besides driving, students are doing at 12. I'll say that again. Whatever you were doing at 16 years old, kids are doing nowadays at 12. From fashion to sexual exploitation to vaping. You weren't vaping, you're probably just smoking, but kids, you're vaping now in middle school. And the kind of humor used, and so much more. And so if you have not yet, I would encourage you to talk to your kids about pornography. And there's an incredible website called fightthenewdrug.org that breaks it down into how porn affects our heart and our relationships, our brains and our development, and also our society. And the society is really interesting in how it's directly linked to sex trafficking and all that stuff. But for now, because it's middle school and adolescent years for us, I want to spend some time talking about brain development for a moment. Today, the average age of first exposure to pornography is between 10 and 11 years old, sometimes as young as 7. Think about that. You're being exposed to these explicit sexual materials when you are 10, 11, 7, 8, 9. And this is unfortunate to say the least, because this is a time where our brains are developing at high rates. There's something that we do called self-concealment. So self-concealment is when we engage in behaviors that we know are not good for us and we hide it. We hide it from other people. And this leads to worse views about yourself, to isolation, to more mental health issues. But more than that, there's an association between the number of hours of pornography someone consumes each week and less gray matter in our brains. And if you're like, what in the world is gray matter? I thought our whole brain was kind of a gray mush. Yes, but real quick, gray matter is a specific part of the brain. It's the darker tissue of the brain and spinal cord, consisting mainly of nerve cells and bodies, and it's associated with decision-making and intelligence. Why this matters is that scientists used to believe that when you were an infant, you had the most amount of gray matter that you would, and as you grow and as you assign knowledge and information and habits to your brain and to your life, naturally the gray matter would decrease because it's being assigned data. What they've actually found in recent decades is it's a parabola. So you actually create gray matter in your brain, and the peak amount that you have to use is during your adolescent years when you're in middle school. What that means is students in middle school have the potential, the greatest potential in their life to learn, to retain information, to set habits for life in middle school. This is the time where their brains are doing it the most. And the correlation in the data suggests that porn is actually associated to a decrease in gray matter, again, which is affecting their decision-making and intelligence. Again, the more they watch, the more addicted they are, the less gray matter they have, and the worse at critical thinking, decision-making, and the worst habits are formed. Again, as a society, we're getting dumber from our phones and from things we're exposed to. And last, there's other exposure, things like sexting and airdropping. I recently heard a story from a sophomore in high school who says that people airdrop sometimes just funny memes and GIFs and videos and stuff, but sometimes they'll just randomly airdrop porn across phones on the school bus. She didn't ask for this. She didn't seek it out, but she was still exposed to it just because of an AirDrop, which is an iPhone device where you can just like Bluetooth send pictures and files back and forth. There's things that we need to be aware of, and one of these things with airdropping is sexting. So it's said that 1 in 4 teens between the ages of 12 and 17, 1 in 4 are receiving sexually explicit text messages and emails. At least 1 in 7 are sending them themselves. More than 1 in 10 are forwarding these texts without consent. And about 1 in 12 teens have had sex they've sent forwarded without their consent at all. This is a dangerous and dark world, and our kids are being pressured to sending these pictures and videos of themselves that they really don't want to do sometimes, sending it to their boyfriends or girlfriends or crushes. And then disaster strikes when now they can be shared and spread with other people as well. And it's happening not at 16 and 17, but also at 12 and 13. And there are things that you can do, though. There are privacy settings in our Apple phones. There is Android as well, privacy settings. There are third-party apps like Covenant Eyes and Bark, which are out there. There's screen time. It would be way too long for me to go through each and every single one of these and tell you how to set it up and what it does. But again, if you go back to that QR code and go to the parent shared folder, then you will see links that tell you all about third-party apps, all about privacy settings, all that you can do to monitor your kids' phones and try to keep them safe, and have conversations with them before they're just exposed to things. That is the research and the data behind the good and the bad to cell phones. That's part 2, where we pulled the mask off of smartphones. Our next video is, okay, well, what do I do now? Even if I feel it's too late and my kid is already doing all these things with their phone, what do I do now? Hopefully you'll check it out, and thank you for tuning in so far with us.